home in Minnetonka, Minnesota, and offer words of whatever nature they prove to be to us all as we are welcoming or prepare to welcome Shabbat today. Rabbi David.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be with you and to celebrate Shabbat with you. And you're a little bit further ahead than us. You are in Shabbat. We are still marching towards Shabbat, but it's nice to have a bit of Sabbath between us, even from such a distance. To add just a bit to the prayers for peace, I think of Yehuda Halevi, who was a poet who more than about a couple hundred years ago, several hundred years ago, in the Middle Ages, penned the words, Libi b'mizrach, my heart is in the east, and here I am in the west. We at Bet Shalom sit a little further in the west than you do, but we share that experience. We're in the west, and our hearts are torn as we face the east. And I know we all join together in praying for peace and for justice. And I would add the prayer that hopefully some responsible folks can restore calm on all sides. I want to express some gratitude. I am grateful for the World Union of Progressive Judaism for arranging this exchange. I don't think that we would have found ourselves on this screen together if it were not for the WPJ. I also see some members of our congregation who have joined here today, and joining together with your congregation, to me, this already seems like a great success. I'm grateful for what is just, I think, and I hope, and I know is the beginning of my relationship with Rabbi Jacobi. We have enjoyed a few Zoom conversations together, and it's already clear that we have some common interests and we have common goals, and that we will be able to support one another and learn from each other over time. I'm grateful for this time with all of you today. While we watched the heartbreaking destruction in our Holy Land, I think it was a different kind of destruction that caused all of you to end up in England and for us to end up in Minnesota. And it's the destruction of the temple that I'm referencing. 2,000 years ago, the temple was destroyed, somewhat like a star, and our ancestors shot out in every direction. In fact, until an astronomer corrects me, I am going to continue to refer to the destruction of the temple like a shooting star, because when a star explodes, we can see where that star was because of all the matter moving away from it. And so we are that matter. And no matter how far we've traveled, our attentions still are directed back to Jerusalem. And it is that intention that binds us together no matter where we are. Rabbi Richard and I discussed sharing a bit about ourselves and our congregations. So before I get to a word of Torah, I would like to do that. My family's been in Minnesota since about 1910. So we have many generations of my family here. And often when I meet Jews and out in the world and other places, they say, Minnesota? There's Jews in Minnesota? Most of them can't even point to it on a map. But here we are in the very central northern part of the United States. Our state borders Canada on the north, which is actually quite a drive. It's 8 or 10 hours north of where I sit. And we are in the center of the country. And on my father's side, on the Locketz side of my family, it was my great-grandfather, Louis Locketz, that came to Minnesota in the 19-teens to meet back up with some brothers who were already here. Louis Locketz was born in Latvia. His father was born in Kupiškis, Lithuania. I've been able to trace the family there back to the 1700s. Between the temple's destruction and the 1700s in Lithuania, I don't know. But I know that my family's experience was probably much like many of yours. On my mother's side of the family, the first record I've been able to find is of my great-great-grandfather, Reuben Rubenstein, who was first recorded as being in Iowa, Des Moines, Iowa, which is the state to the south of us, in 1889. He was a peddler with a cart and a horse, and he laid down roots there. My parents met. My parents are here tonight or this afternoon. Grateful to have them here, as well as my in-laws, who I see on the screen as well. They met in the 1960s at the University of Minnesota. And the rest of it is somewhat history. I myself met my wife, Debbie, at the Union for Reform Judaism summer camp in Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. And we've been married for almost 21 years, and we have 2 teenage daughters. So life is good. I've been a rabbi here at Bet Shalom since 2004 when I was ordained. I came straight from rabbinical school, and I was very lucky to learn from our founding rabbi, Rabbi Norman Cohen. When he retired in 2016, I was even luckier to become the senior rabbi. I have a terrific team here, an associate rabbi named Rabbi Jill Crimmings, a cantor named Tamar Havilio, who just has been with us less than a year. She came to us from Jerusalem, from the Hebrew Union College. Our emeritus rabbi, founding rabbi, Norman Cohen, is still active in the congregation. And we have an executive director named Steve Barbario. And beyond that, we have a terrific staff of about 5 or 6 other people who work to support our congregation. We also have a child care center in our building, which has about 70 children in it every day with teachers. And so our building is busy and exciting and a lot going on. Our synagogue is 40 years old. We started out with just 4 families in 1981 at the Jewish Community Center here in town. They met every week for Shabbat services there. After a few years in 1984, they moved to a suburb called Hopkins, Minnesota, which is not far from where I stand. They were there for 18 or 19 years and we moved into our current building in May of 2002, which was just about 2 years before I came and 19 years ago. And I'm fumbling here just for a second because I would love to show you the building. There it is. We have a beautiful building. I feel so fortunate. I came 2 years after it was built, and so I didn't do all of the hard work that the rest of the congregation did to make it happen. But we have this beautiful piece of land here with some wetland and some nature and a lovely building that is round. It's a terrific facility. So we've been in this building for 19 years. There are about 40,000 Jews in the state of Minnesota, believe it or not. And there are 4 or 5 different cities around the state that have synagogues. We in Minnetonka are a suburb just west of Minneapolis, Minnesota, which has been made famous recently for not terrific reasons, but perhaps you've seen us on a map. So we're just west of Minneapolis, and together the Twin Cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul, here there are about a dozen progressive congregations. The Jewish community here was established in the mid-1800s, like in many American cities, during the westward expansion. I would say that the greatest number of Jews during that time came to Minneapolis in the 1880s, mostly from Germany, and then in the early 1900s from Poland. In 1981, a small group of families, I mentioned before, 4 families, were looking for a different kind of congregation. It didn't exist here in Minneapolis, so they created it along with Rabbi Cohen. And over the years, we've been known for some core values like warmth and welcome and inclusion and tradition. We're warm to tradition. We use a lot of Hebrew in our services. We're also, I think, known to be especially welcoming to interfaith families. Some of the words that original group of families used to describe what they were creating was a family of friends. And so we often think of our congregation as being a family of friends. We're also very much a grassroots congregation. Today, we have grown from over 400 families in 1981, or from 4 families in 1981 to over 700 families today, and we continue to grow. That's a little bit about us, and I know that we'll learn more about each other over time. And so I'd like to share just a couple of words of Torah. I know from your rabbi that you read Torah in a triennial cycle, which I think is really interesting. We've talked about doing that here a bit. We actually study Torah in a triennial cycle, but I know that you, during your worship, read the Torah in a triennial cycle, and so you are going to learn about Korach tomorrow morning. Korach and his rebellion against authority, his rebellion against Moses. In this parashah, we learn that Korach really wanted to overthrow Moses. He didn't feel that Moses should deserve all of the authority that he had, and he wanted some for himself. And I think most of us probably don't approve of how Korach went about this, but we also don't totally disagree with his desire for liberation and emancipation. We liberal Jews bristle at black and white theocratic approaches to tradition. I believe that progressive Judaism continues to flourish for a number of reasons. In my own progressive approach, I've always been inspired by a favorite Talmud text from the Babylonian Talmud, which comes from Baba Metzia. Some of you, I'm sure your rabbis, know of this story. It comes right after a discussion of the oven of Achnai, where two rabbis were arguing over who could determine that what comes out of the oven was pure. So they're arguing about kashrut. And one of the rabbis, Rabbi Eliezer, starts to argue that he has the authority, that he should be able to say that it is pure or not pure. And he's arguing with a group of rabbis, and they won't concede to him. And so he decides to give some examples. And he says, if you won't believe me that I have the authority, then let this carob tree that's planted over here beside me, let it prove my authority. And as he said that, the carob tree uprooted itself, walked across the path, and rerooted itself. And the other rabbi said, essentially, nice magic trick, but that doesn't prove anything. Rabbi Eliezer was starting to get more irritated. And he said, if you don't believe me, if you don't concede that I have the authority, let this stream that's flowing over here prove it. And just as he said that, the stream, the current in the stream turned around and started to flow the other direction. And the rabbis again said, nice magic trick, but that doesn't prove anything. Rabbi Eliezer, I think he probably had quite a temper, started to get even more angry. And in that moment, he said, let the walls of this house of study prove my authority. And so the walls started to fall in, started to cave in. And Rabbi Yehoshua rebuked those walls and said, why are you getting involved in an argument between two rabbis? And so those walls stopped. They stopped caving in, and tradition says that they're still standing at an angle to this day in deference to both of those rabbis. And in that moment, Rabbi Eliezer yelled out, if you don't believe me, if you don't concede that I have the authority, let a voice from heaven declare it, a bat kol. At that moment, a voice from heaven did yell out, why are you not conceding to Rabbi Eliezer? Why are you not believing his authority? And so Rabbi Yehoshua got up and pointed his finger up to heaven and said, Lo b'shamayim hi. It's not in heaven. The Torah isn't in heaven. The Torah is here. You gave it to us on Mount Sinai. And ever since you gave it to us on Mount Sinai, you need to stay out of it. You need to let Torah scholars argue amongst each other and come to a conclusion. I share this story as we are thinking about Korach because I think it is so human. Our ancestors were so human. Everybody wants to feel like their voice can be heard. Korach was no different. Like I said, we might not like his tactics, but we understand his desire. And in our story as well, they all wanted to be heard. And we want to be heard. And so we understand ourselves as being a part of a people that, in this part of our tradition, this progressive form of Judaism, allows our voices to be heard. When we study together, when we pray together, when we come together, we can see ourselves as part of a people who will hear our voices, listen to our voices, and ultimately, as a community, move forward. A community that is much larger than a group in any one city. We see ourselves as being a part of a people. The Talmud also sees us that way. Frequently in the Babylonian Talmud, we hear mention of somebody who came from over there, usually meaning Jerusalem. And so today we celebrate being part of a people that spans the entire world. All of us, in some way, being led back through history to Jerusalem. So may we on this Shabbat embody the freedom that comes from the Torah not being in heaven. May we bring the light of Torah into the world. The Torah that is here is our own. It's in our hands. It's in our mouths. May its words brighten a world that so often feels dark. May we look forward to a time when we might find ourselves in the same place for a visit between cousins, not just on a screen. May this be God's will. Ken Yehi Ratzon. Thank you for having me as part of your service and gathering tonight. And also, I want to say Mazal Tov to PA. Welcome to the House of Israel.
Thank you, Rabbi David, and amen to everything you have said. I certainly hope that the words of peace and the words of diverse understanding that we must continue to have and allow to happen will be heeded more rapidly in places in our own countries and around the world where there is a dogmatic belief that if I'm right, you must be wrong, and we've learned from your words this evening a powerful reminder that there are different ways of more people being right, and we should hold on to that thought. As we move forward in our service, what that takes us to, and thank you so much for all that you've said, is the incumbent duty that is upon us, the duty that falls to us to consider how we will make this world a better place. And so we come back together in our liturgy to page 520 in our Siddur, to the Aleinu, and to the duty that is upon us, as the English text in front of us says, to praise the sovereign of the universe and proclaim the greatness of its creator. And we don't need the but call to come from heaven now. We have to determine the best way forward amongst ourselves on earth in order to bring about the improvement in the world that we so wish to see. So do please join with me as we sing together. Aleinu l'shabech l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, אשר שם חלקנו ליחד את שמו, וגור עלינו להמליך מלכותו, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובה מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד. And we're going to move to the foot of page 521, the foot of that page, as we say together, V'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz, bayom hahu, yihyeh Adonai echad, Ushemo echad. As we come to the second passage there on page 522, we say, as we worship before you, O God, we think of those who once shared with us the joys and burdens of life and who are no longer in our midst. In our community, we have been saddened by news of the death of Viv Allen after her long illness. And I'd like to inform my community that we will be circulating information about the funeral service for Viv that will be on Wednesday early afternoon, and we're hoping that we can make that available over this or another medium so that you can join it electronically, if not in person. I'd also like to mention, as someone that Simon Bencher and many others know, the sad news that was shared amongst the liberal Jewish community of the passing of one of its vice presidents, and a figure that links the generations, my father's generation to mine, Jeremy Friedman, who sadly died last Shabbat, and whose funeral was in the week. Jeremy had been one of the former chairs of our movement and continued to be a very active vice president, ensuring that we conformed to our highest standards in the way in which our movement went about doing its business, and embodying also the principles that you, Rabbi David, talked about earlier of warmth and welcome, and making us feel that we were a family of friends across the movement in this United Kingdom when we would gather at conferences and gatherings across the community. The sorrow of bereavement is softened by the bond of love which continues to unite us with our dear ones, and by our cherished memories of them, which we will always carry in our hearts. Those memories become a little more clear and vivid for us at the time of a yahrzeit. And so on this Shabbat, we join with David and Keith Gold as they, together with Dee's own daughter, will be marking the yahrzeit of Dee Gold, who I mentioned earlier in this service. We also join with John Morrison in remembering Eva Morrison, his mother, with Raina Marcus in remembering her mother, Jean Rubin, and with Hazel Isaacs, the widow of, and with Stephen Isaacs, the brother of Howard Isaacs, as they remember him on the occasion of his yahrzeit. And also we join with Anne and David Peterson as they remember their daughter, Teresa Clark. If there are any other people that you would like to mention who have died, and I can see that Victor has mentioned Prue Temple, and Effie has mentioned his mother's yahrzeit that falls in the coming few days, Margaret Jackson. And if others would like to mention anyone, then do please unmute yourself if you wish to mention somebody before we proceed on towards Kaddish.
Maurice Grossman.
Thank you. Would you like to just say that name again for us so we hear it properly?
Maurice Grossman.
Thank you very much. And we add Maurice to our prayers. And if there are any others, and then, as has become our custom, we invite those who wish to recite Kaddish to unmute themselves, and we will each say Kaddish at our own pace and in our own way, so that we can participate in and be heard in that. So if there are other names, then please mention them now. But we say at this point the prayer that all that was good in their lives will remain with us as an influence for good. Grant consolation to those who are in sorrow and light to those in darkness. Teach us at all times to put our trust in you and to praise your name as we say together, Yitkadal
Yitkadash Shema Balam
Благословен Мамая Итпара Иштабах Итpa Arvi Brahma Itnakase
Land vi har kallat för Kabinettam.
Allah being called Rabbi Shirat Tushbahata Benechama Hata Amira Yam Imaru Amen Yamam Rabba Min Shemaya Bachayim Alel Kol Yisrael Be'imaru Amen Ota Shalom Imaravu Yata Shalom Aleinu Kol
Amen.
Imaru Amen.
Thank you all and we wish all those who are remembering many good memories, and also that they should be comforted amongst all the mourners in Israel, in Zion, and wherever they are. Before we conclude, I'd like to invite our Chair of Council, Stuart, to make a few synagogue announcements for us, please, and then we will conclude. Given that time is running on, we'll maybe conclude with the first and last verses of Adon Olam in a couple of moments. But Stuart.
Thanks, Ashish. I'll try and be quick. Shabbat Shalom to you all. Thanks to Rabbi Richard for leading the service, to Gary and Ben for hosting, and for all who took part. And a very special thanks to Rabbi David for coming all the way from Minnesota to talk to us by the wonders of Zoom. And a very warm welcome to the members of the congregation who've been here, and we very much look forward to our return visit next month. All of us coming over to Minnesota. Tomorrow's morning service begins at 10:45 and is jointly led by Rabbi Richard and student Rabbi Peter. Shavuot begins for us on Sunday evening with an E-Camps communal Come Shavuot with Me dinner and chat at 6:30, a service at 7:30, and then from 8:30, a liberal Judaism Tikkun Le'ol with talks, discussions, speeches, quiz, prayers, and it really does go through until 5 a.m. on Monday morning. Of course, you don't have to stay the whole right till 5, but please register on the LJ program to get log-on details for all the individual events, including a discussion held by our own Rabbi Richard. And on Monday morning at 10:45, Rabbi David will lead the Shavuot morning service. And later on Monday at 4 o'clock, Judy leads the ELS puzzlers team with word games. And later on at 7 o'clock, Nick leads a football discussion, probably reviewing the FA Cup. 11s this week will be from Tuesday to Friday at 11 a.m. And on Tuesday evening, 8 p.m, Rabbi Pete Tobias, holding the last of his talks on putting the O in God. This Thursday, we have our EGM to vote for our representatives to the Board of Deputies, and details on the update. And two very different events coming up week after next. On Monday, the 25th of May, Gary Friedman representing Spurs, John Morrison representing Arsenal, in a hopefully calm discussion on the best team in North London. Whilst 2 nights later, in complete contrast, Alice Wilcox will be in discussion with a lady called Nadia Razgozina, who used to work for the BBC, on the history of her family during the Russian Revolution, Stalin's repression, the pogroms, and the Second World War, and her history of her family going through all that very painful period. We do cover a very wide range of topics here. Just mention that Rabbi Richard is having a very deserved, hopefully relaxing, enjoyable break for a couple, or for 3 weeks actually. So if anyone does have any questions or problems that come up, please contact the office or myself, and the numbers on the website. So if any questions, please do. And Richard, we look forward to you coming back relaxed after what has been an incredibly hard time of work, and we really do appreciate it. Just want to mention very fond memories of Dee for many of us this evening, who was known in the Post Synagogue, very hard-working member of Bet Tikva, and wishing David and Tina and Carol and all the family a long life, and wishing long life to all who mourn. Thanks again to our American cousins for visiting, and Shabbat Shalom to you all. Take care. Thanks, Richard. Sorry I've gone on a bit.
Very quickly, can I just correct Stuart on one thing? It was a misprint on the Best in North London. It's about each individual's passion for their team and what made them support that team in the first place. It's got nothing to do with a war on football in North London, because there's only one North London team anyway.
Yeah, that's Saracens.
You took that opportunity very well, but we'll move to conclude with the, as I said, we'll just do the first and the last verses of Adon Olam to celebrate both the relationship we have with the God of all, and also the relationship we have with the divine individual spark that each of us has and needs in our life. Adon Olam, Hashem Alach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Leit Nasa, V'chefto Kol, Azai Melech, Shemo Nikra, Beyado Avkid Ruchi, Beit Ishan, Be'aira, Ve'im Ruchi, Ve'yati, Adonai li, v'lo ira. Adon Olam Hashem alach b'terem kol yitziniv, leit nasa b'chefto kol azai melech shemonik, ve'acharei kichlot hakol levado yimloch nora v'hu haya v'hu og, hu yeh b'tifar. Adon Olam Hashem alach b'terem kol yitziniv, leit nasa b'chefto kol azai melech shemonik, ve'acharei kichlot hakol levado yimloch nora v'hu haya v'hu og, tifara v'hu haya v'hu og, Tifara v'hu haya v'hu oveh v'tifara. As the words of that final verse say, into your hand I place my soul, asleep awake, for you are near, and with my soul my body too. You are my God, I shall not fear. And to wish all of you Shabbat Shalom, and give you just a moment to take hold of whatever it is you would like to make Kiddush with. I hope you have Kiddush wine of some description to hand, or would like to follow along with a drink. I'm conscious our service has gone on very long. I would like to just hear, while we're going through Kiddush, if members of each congregation are willing to stay on for a little bit longer, so that after we conclude the stream, you'd be happy to go into breakout groups and meet each other a little bit, and host, you'd need to organize that pretty quickly. So if you are happy to stay on, if you would just type yes into the chat column, we'll see if looks like we have sufficient people who are willing and able to stay on for another 15 minutes maybe, that we can do that. So we'll need a fair number of yeses to make it worthwhile. Do please join with me. Vayichulu hashamayim va'aretz v'chol tzva'am ויכל אלוהים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה, וישפוט ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה. ויברך אלוהים את יום השביעי ויקדש אותו, כי בו שבת מכל מלאכתו אשר ברא אלוהים לעשות. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגפן, אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו ורצה בנו, ושבת קודשו באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו, זיכרון למעשה בראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. Amen. L'chaim, everyone, wherever you are, and Shabbat Shalom. And the final blessing before we say farewell and Shabbat Shalom to all those who are streaming for this evening and this afternoon. We sing together, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. So Shabbat Shalom to everyone, and in just a couple of moments or a few seconds, the stream will come to an end.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.